What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, and if this is your first time tuning into the podcast, I welcome you and hope that you return for new episodes after this incredible one. And if you are a returning listener or viewer of this podcast, I welcome you back and hope that today's episode is one that you will find informative, enlightening, and as always, insightful. So before we get to our main event, for those who are tuning in, just a reminder for you to hit that red button if you're watching from YouTube. It's under my name, Kwame Sarfo-Mensah, in case you can't find the channel. And if you're listening from Apple Podcasts or Spotify, welcome again. And we hope that you subscribe from there as well. Now, we also accept any monetary contributions and donations for folks who want to continue to help us build this platform and bring on these phenomenal educators. So if you're someone who is on Cash App, you can donate to the following handle, #, IDTALK4ED. And if you are on the Venmo, you could donate with the handle @Kwame SM. That's KWAMESM. And to just learn more about Identity Talk Consulting and our services, you can check us out at identitytalk4educators.com. Thank you again for the support. Now, throughout the course of this podcast and its history, which is going on, 4 years. Wow, that's a long time. We've had a lot of women of color who have gone through academia, who are either professors, who are nonprofit leaders, or who are just educators who are in the K-12 classroom. But this sister that we're about to interview today has such a inspiring and phenomenal story that she's a special kind of Ph.D. Now, she's still, I believe, in the process of getting a PhD, but she's already a certified PhD. So what do I mean by that? She's persistent and humanly divine. That's the PhD that we like to have on the podcast. And as far as why she is deemed this title, we're going to find out when we hear this story. So I don't want to waste any more time. I want to bring her out. Her name is Ashley Lipscomb, and she has a story that I will tell you warrants the title that it gave her. So let's go ahead and bring Ashley out, and she's going to let us know why she is that. All right, y'all. Hello.
Hello. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for that introduction.
Yeah, I told myself this season, I'm going to step up the introductions and really just make them special. So I'm glad that it's meeting people's expectations thus far. How you feeling?
Yes, I'm feeling great. Thank you so much. I am honored to be on this podcast with you and super excited to have this conversation.
Yes, and just in full transparency, you are someone who I've been meaning to get on for a minute, and I just appreciate the support you've given me from afar
Mhm.
over the past few years, whether it's reposting things I've put out there, whether it's sharing as a story, or just putting out words of inspiration. You've always been someone that's been rocking with Identity Talk, anything Identity Talk. So I appreciate you for everything, and it's an honor to have you on this platform.
Yes, you're amazing. So, the support comes easy. I'm always supporting the folks who are rocking for us on the ground. And so super grateful for you and the work that you're doing out in the world. So this is truly the honor is mine today.
Awesome. So let's get right in because there's a lot that I want to talk to you about. But let's start here. Who or what inspired you to become an educator?
Oh, such a great question. Yeah, I would have to say my grandmothers. Both of them were in the school
Ooh.
system.
Nice.
Yeah, and I really don't think about it too much, beyond the stories that my maternal grandmother would bring home. She's the one I lived with, so I was raised by my grandparents and my aunt, and so in our family home, it's what you see here. And one of the things that I would always see, like, my grandmother's always in community. So she would be, my maternal grandmother would be at the PTA meetings. She's talking about teachers. She's fighting for this for the kids. She's a part of every program you can think of. And I saw that at a very young age. And I think seeing that she planted some seeds in me, right, to have this sort of passion for not just students, but for community, because she's very much about the community, fighting for the community, making sure that the community is fed and people doing right. And so when I saw that, I think she planted a lot of seeds in me that were for education. And my other grandmother, my paternal grandmother, who was in the same district, right, from the same town, um, worked as what they called a truants officer then, right? A truancy officer. And so if you were missing too many days of school or something like that, it would be her department that would sort of show up to make sure that, to see what's going on, to check what's going on. And I learned even a lot from her. She's my maternal grandmother was more outgoing, and I think I get that from her. But my paternal grandmother was more reserved and quiet. But when she did talk about certain things, you tended to listen. And so she would talk about how, in her own way, the ways that the systems were wrong and the ways that they were approaching student absence. And I didn't get that then, right?
Right.
I was just a kid listening. Once I finally got to the high school, I was just excited that my grandmother was working at the high school and I get free stuff, right? Because that was the grandmother that spoiled me.
Nice.
I was her only grandbaby. So I was excited about the free stuff. So I get to stay in her office and see all the stuff that's going down, not understanding really the work that she's doing until now, right? And I get to reflect on that. But when I think it's a long answer to say, the folks who really inspired me are my grandmothers.
Awesome. So teaching has always been in your blood.
Hmm.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So let's think about when you were going through your own K-12 schooling, as we all have, right?
Hmm.
For some of us, it may have been a smooth ride, but for others, there were ups and downs, maybe more downs than ups, or vice versa.
Hmm.
So I'm curious to know, just from your own schooling, were there any struggles, whether they were internal or external, that you had to overcome in order to embrace who you were and to show up as your full self?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes society is unkind to those who don't live in what Sonia Renee Taylor calls the default body, right? In her book,
Yes.
The Power of Radical Self Love, she talks about that default body being, white, male, without disabilities and things like that. Um, Also has heteronormative relationships with the world and who they find love with. And usually, if you don't show up in those bodies, then the world is not necessarily kind to you.
Hmm.
And so, being a Black girl coming from my particular neighborhood, plus size girl living in a fat body, like, there are things that the world does that teaches you not to love yourself. And for me, academics and reading, more specifically, reading was a way for me to escape that kind of world. I could be anybody, right? When I'm reading a novel, I can find love in a novel. I can find adventure in a novel. And those things were where, I found comfort. So trying to do high school with all of these sort of self deprivating conversations I have with myself at a young age, it made me shy, afraid to show up in the world. So the way I can find confidence is in my academics, right? Because for my community, oh, you're the girl who read a lot of books. You kind of smart, and so when teachers see that, it's the student that it's easier to work with. because I'm in the books. I'm trying to find some sense of community because of my brain, because I thought that was the way to do it, right? That's the way to be recognized and get all of the accolades and to be seen if you're smart. And it's easier to connect with teachers that way, right? You're the good student. You're this. You don't cause many problems. So, yeah, sure, I want to invest in you. But really, they don't see this sort of scared little girl who wants to be loved for who she is, not who she has to sort of pretend to be liked, right? Also, feeling not seen was like a real thing for me. Um, and many people wouldn't know that. I think that they would see me and see that I was a part of every club you could think of. I was going to church all the time. You know, that's the church girl right there.
Mm.
And even now, as I talk to like high school friends, you know, and we're all doing wonderful things out in the world, even they're like, well, we kind of knew you'd be doing something, right? And it was something I wasn't even thinking of then, just dreaming of a world where people would just love me for me. And I found that now. But when I think about high school, it was harder to engage when the world teaches you consistently that your body, the way you show up, the way you think, is not necessarily worthy of that love, right? That's what they teach us. And so we have to work every day to unlearn that for sure.
Yeah, man, that's real. That is absolutely real. And just to add on to what you dealt with in K to 12, because you were so invested in the books,
Hmm.
you were able to get lots of scholarships. If I'm not mistaken, you got, was it 14 scholarships?
Something like that. It was about
14, 13,
14.
14
Yeah, it was
scholarships.
a whole lot.
And I want to just let people know, like, when you look at Ashley's resume, you thinking, okay, like she is just awesome. So she gets the 14 scholarships. You end up going to the Mecca, HU,
I
for
I mean
undergrad,
I mean.
right? You end up getting a supervisor certification,
Hmm.
right? You get not one, but I think two masters.
I have to, yeah. Hmm.
And now you're doing a PhD at Rutgers.
Hmm.
So you look at a resume like that, people are thinking, whoa, like brilliant. But not too many people really understand the journey that you had to go through to even get to this point.
Hmm.
And this is spanning about a decade and a half. So I would love for you, if you don't mind, to just share that story and what just gave you the motivation to keep on persisting and pushing through. Because for most people, they hit one of those roadblocks, it's a white flag coming out. But you just said, nah, we gonna make this happen. We gonna get to this finish line. So I'd love to kind of hear the drive that you had to overcome all that.
Yeah. Oh, listen, okay, because those no's will get you.
Mhm.
They take you down.
That's
I
right.
am.
That's
I
right.
have
They
gotten
add up over
some
time. They definitely do.
no's. They do. Um, I think that as I think about it, you know, what pushes you through, definitely faith. And I think my faith journey has also is not something you brought me to talk about, right? But it's a part of my story. And so
Talk about it.
my faith journey is also, I think, a part of it. In that I've always, from a very young age, have trusted God to do exactly what God is going to do in my life. And
Hmm.
I've just been very invested in, if it's a no, I'm gonna lick my wounds. I'm not one of those people who's like, you know, it's a no, but I'm gonna keep pushing. I'm gonna keep, no, no, no. I'm gonna cry for 2 weeks. Okay. I'm gonna be on my couch with a good old Disney movie with some, you know, snacks around me. I'm lick my wounds. My friends gonna have to take me out. I'm crying because I can't believe I done got all these no's. The grants I done applied. No, everybody
All
saying
right,
no.
all right.
But there's something in me that says, you know, or at least my faith in the life that I want, that says that no does not communicate who you are. It's not
Hmm.
about you. It's about these systems, right, that are working against you. But it doesn't have to end here. You have exactly what you need to keep pushing for you. And unless it really is not for me, I will keep pushing to get what I need to get. And
Sure.
that's just because I just believe that there's something bigger than me in this. And that the work I do and the passion I have for it, the passion I have for education, the passion I have for scholarship and research, it's about community, right? Because I moved back home. I left my neighborhood and came right back to it, and I'm trying to stay in it. Okay, but these rent prices pushing it. But when I think about that, it's just like I know that I'm fighting for something bigger than me, and I cannot allow these no's to stop me. And so I believe that I have faith in, God, who's like, I gave you more than what you need to go do what you need,
Hmm.
and will communicate to me when this ain't gonna work. It's okay to walk away when it's not gonna work. But what's for me is going to be for me. And so I've received the no's, right? I've received the rejections. And I said, okay, what do I need to learn in order to get the yes? What do I need to do to get that yes? Because this is about my community. And there's not enough Black folks, right? Not enough Black people researching and doing the things that we need for our communities. They're writing about me, but they're not including me in these stories,
Come
right?
on.
They don't want to give us room to tell the stories that we need to tell. And so for me, it's okay. That's one no. I'm gonna figure it out and I'm gonna get it right the next time. So I've been rejected from PhD programs several times over until I learned the recipe. I got the support I needed, got the finance I needed, just like those scholarships. When they told me when I was in high school, my family was like, we can't afford to send you away to a private college at that HBCU where you ain't getting those scholarships. Stay right here and get the scholarships. We can't send you. I said, okay, that's one no, but I can guarantee I'm gonna make a way. And that's why I was applying to all those scholarships. Those people in there, I remember too, that
Mm.
guidance department, every time they saw me coming, they said, all right, here you go. Here's another one. You just keep coming. I remember that. They're like, you just keep coming
You're
here.
like,
We
you're
don't
gonna be
have
sick
nothing
of
else.
me. You're gonna be sick of
I was
me.
like, y'all got another one. It got to the
Come
point
on.
where they were looking for me, like, before you even get to this office, here is another scholarship for you to apply to. And that's how I was getting them all because I was hungry for it because I knew that there was something bigger, something more. And so that I think that I learned that at a young age, being in high school, that if you push for it and you fight for it, it will be. And so that's why when I get a no, it's okay. Thank you for the no. I'm gonna lick my wounds. I'm gonna have my ice cream, but I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna learn, where did I mess up? How do I make it better? We're gonna try this again. And
Mm.
that process has just sort of worked out for me in multiple areas. I think people only see the academic story, but they don't see, like, even with my business, where we've gotten rejections upon rejections for grants and things like that, and then we get funded by somebody. It just took one yes that we
That's right.
needed, and it was like, I got a no from that grant the year before, but I applied again because I said, I'm gonna learn the recipe. Y'all tell me what I did wrong. I'm gonna get it right. But I think that that's how
Right.
we should be in life, right? That in life we are taught that perfection has to look like one thing, but maybe life is just messy and it's about us just learning how to be better humans,
Hmm.
learning how to do better. And I think that that's just a recipe that I've sort of just picked up. So even in my friendships, when I ain't the best friend and they call me out on it, I'm learning that. All right, well, let me get it right the next time. If I can apply this to other areas of my life, I can apply this here. When we are at work, right? And we realize something is not working for students, we can try again. I don't think we always have to have it right the first time around. And I think that's a beautiful sort of framing to have for life in general.
Yes, listeners and viewers, this right here is the power of manifestation that we're talking about right here.
Mm-hmm.
And you've mentioned the word systems in a couple of occasions already. And this is a perfect segue into my next question because, as you know very well, systems is something that comes up in
Mm-hmm.
the world of academia.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about the public scholarship that we have out there now, that goes against those outdated norms. When we think about peer review articles, when we think about um, what what is considered a scholarly piece, versus what isn't, which voices are being centered,
Mhm.
the literary canon that you're
Mhm.
expected to delve into in order to inform the information in your publications that you have to write, the tenure process. So there's so many aspects. Now I know in your case, you're going through that process right now as a doctoral student at Rutgers. And before you start to talk about what exactly you're studying, I'd love for you to just share some of the ups and downs that you've experienced thus far in this journey, whether it's with the type of research you've had to do, whether there's been pushback from advisors on what to study, lit reviews, just any part of the journey.
Yeah. So I am in my second year. I am still in coursework,
There you
right?
go.
So I'm still taking classes that's stressing me out. I am still doing a lot of reading. Um, but I'll speak to the advisor piece because I am blessed in that I have an advisor who is about it.
Mm-hmm. That's what's
Right?
up.
Who
That's
is
important.
what? Who is like, no, we ain't we like, and when I tell you I love him and I really do appreciate him for all the ways that he sort of even helped me to get here, right? Because we had never sort of met until I was doing the application process. He was one of the first professors to reach out to me, and when we had a conversation, and he's a white man, right? And we talking about all of these black radical things, and I'm like, look, I want to show up in this way, and he's with it. And I'm like, but I have a business, and he's also nourishing the fact that I have a business, right? And hold space when I'm losing it because I'm like all this coursework and my business and all these things I'm just barely holding on, holding space for all of that. So where others, my peers, don't have that story, I want to acknowledge that, right? Like this isn't always the case, but it is
Right.
one that I have and this experience that I share. And I'm grateful for it because I heard from other people and other programs who do not have this, especially Black women. We don't get people in our corner willing to support the scholarship that we want to put out in the world. It just so happens that my advisor got that. Right. And when I was talking to other people at other schools, that offered me a little extra in terms of compensation. It ultimately ended on, am I going to have an advisor who's going to feed me, nourish me, and really support and get my scholarship? And in that way, he did. So it was like kind of like I had to go with Rutgers at that point. Um, and I'll also say that Rutgers is also an interesting place. Right? I think that these
Yeah.
universities are something. Okay. And they believe, like you said before, that certain research is about, I also went to Harvard. So it's kind of like
Mm,
I got that. And I didn't want that again. I get like certain research is supposed to be like above others and the competition and all those things. And I'm not sure that that's where I needed to be again. And so in this space, however, for me as a scholar, I am committed to ensuring that my scholarship is accessible to the everyday for us, right? So that means that I am willing to take the risk to produce scholarship that I can literally put into my family's hands and say, "Hey, read this and tell me what you get back from that." Because if they can't read it because our words are so big, and I was a religious studies person, so we love to write in the loops and the swoops and come
of
back
course.
again, and it's going to take me 20 pages to get to the one point I was supposed to get. So I get all of that. I love writing like that. It's the twists and turns. But I'm really committed to making sure that the scholarship that I put out in the world is something that is beneficial to our comrades who are working at the grassroots levels on the ground. who are working for that educator who's working every day to make sure that people love children right, that people support Black students, right? And so those educators, they need those quick points. They need that kind of research that they can just have in their hand and put out there, right? That's why I really started the Institute, so that we had the resources that were accessible to us and not stonewalled, right, by the academy, harder to read, full of all these things. I don't think that that also does not determine what makes great scholarships. Our lives, our stories are important, and the research that we want to do, it's also important, right? And so there are journals that I plan on submitting to, and if they don't accept it, that's okay. You know, I'm cool with taking a no. But I think
No.
it only takes one journal, right, to say yes. And that means that those are the journals that I'm supposed to be in. But I also believe that I have writing that's outside of the academy. So I also produce blogs on a regular basis, right? We have a newsletter that comes out from our organization weekly. So there are other ways that I get information out to the world. And I know that in order to support my academic journey, that these are things that I have to do, right? As I'm sort of growing as a scholar, yeah, you got to write in journals. But I don't know that I have to compromise what I understand to be my scholarship in order to be accepted. I'm okay with the no.
So this season, Identity Talk for Educators Live will be including ad spots for businesses, products, and events that are adding significant value to their communities. And here's the catch: you don't have to be an educator or an education based business to be a part of this. We're looking for people who are just doing great work in the community, and we want to use our platform as a way to amplify their work. So if you are an entrepreneur or you know of an entrepreneur who is doing just that, bring them in our direction. Have them reach out to us. If they want to learn more about their ad spots and how they can get themselves promoted on this platform, they can contact myself, Kwame at identitytalkforeducators.com. I'll say it one more time. It is Kwame at identitytalkforeducators.com. Hope to hear from you, and let's keep on amplifying our work and building each other up.
Right?
Right.
And the places I'm supposed to be in, I'll be in.
And as you're mentioning this, there are two sisters who come to mind, two who are good friends of mine. Think about Sister Yolanda Silly Ruiz
Mhm.
out in Colombia.
Mhm.
I mean, you're talking about one of the most loving women you will ever come across. Like,
Yes.
I could sit down and listen to her talk all day.
Mhm.
Um, and she's someone who does poetry.
Mhm.
She's even used some of her scholarly works and she's turned it into like a speakeasy where she has like a band and all these other things. How many people in academia even do that? That is so out the norm. Like you would even consider doing that. And then you think about Dr. Angel Jones,
Mhm.
street scholar,
Mhm.
what she's doing with social media to get her scholarship out there and to build other folks' agency in the process.
Mhm.
These are sisters who have submitted publications to different journals and been rejected,
Mhm.
but they still maintain who they are and they still keep on pushing, just like you're pushing. So it's important that our narratives are multimodal and they're activating different parts of our brains, but also reaching different audiences because not everybody is going to be in that academia crowd.
Right. Right.
Sometimes we
Mhm.
got to get out of that world to really connect with people in ways that are accessible to them. So I love that you bring that up.
Yeah, for sure. And you're naming like the folks that I look up to, right?
Exactly.
Who really set the standard and pave the way and are paving the way so that more of us can produce this scholarship, right? And I think about even, Dina Simmons, Dr. Dina Simmons has even talked
Mm-hmm.
about finding spaces and creating our own spaces outside of academia, right? And I think that those are beautiful um women who have and continue to pave the way for us and really setting a model about what can and cannot be done, right? And even Dr. Bettina Love, right? Like the list goes on. Dr. Goldie Muhammad, like these folks who have paved ways in academia and have made names for themselves, right? Gloria Gladstone Billings, like the list goes on of these folks that I'm inspired by and really give my flowers to for saying and really just wanting to say thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a long list
Thank
that can keep
you.
on going on and on and on. Just all
Right.
these black women, phenomenal black women in academia. So, on staying on this topic, before we pivot to the institute, because I do want to talk about that. So, given the current state of academia, do you have any aspirations of becoming a tenured professor and staying on that track? Is that something that's part of your future plans, or is it just let me just get this degree and keep it moving,
Mm.
doing work for the community, doing work for the institute?
I'll say it is hard for me to answer that question
All right.
because life just be life in me sometimes. And my expectations about what my future will be is always one thing and then it turns into something else. Because I
Mhm,
thought
I
I was
feel
going to be a superintendent by now. And that did not
that.
happen at all. Okay. I thought
Right.
I was on track to be like one of the youngest superintendents to ever do it. I was ready. That did not happen for me. Life just changed and different doors were open. And so really even thinking that I could be in academia in this way has completely shifted over the last couple of years.
Okay.
And so like there's so many parts of me that's like, yes, absolutely. I want to be a tenure track professor. Like I want to be out there working with students and helping us to imagine what the world can be and figuring out what kind of research that requires, like and all those things. But I also understand that my work at the institute is just really important. And I think they could be a both and, right? So I see my
Sure.
future doing that both and, but I never know. Because I'm telling you, I have thought about I just knew I was gonna be doing something else. And that did not happen. So I want to say yes, that's exactly what I want to do. But I also know my life don't always work out that way. So I don't just leave the door open to anything is possible. And when I get there and cross the door to that path, we'll see what doors open and what's possible. So would I love it? Of course. I'd love to be back in the classroom. I love teaching. It's a part of it. I do my little teaching in the community with our little vacation Bible school at church, and I get to keep teaching the kids, like those kind of things. So on that end, I love teaching. The spirit of teaching, the art of teaching is something I love, right? That's why I became a teacher. And so yeah, I would love to go back into the classroom in that way.
Awesome. So let's talk about the Institute for Anti-Racist Education. And this is how I was introduced to you
Mhm.
through the work that you do for your organization, which does phenomenal work. You have a lot of incredible projects that are either underway or currently being done. So I do want to give you the opportunity to just you talked about the inspiration behind it just now, but just talk to us about some of those projects that you're working on and the services that the institute provides for folks.
Yeah. So what inspired me to co-found the institute? I was an educator for a couple of years, and then I needed to get my master's in divinity because I was ordained as a reverend. So I needed to do that as well. So that was my second master's. I went to Harvard Divinity School for a couple of years and graduated in the pandemic. And that was an interesting time in the world, also an interesting time for me because I was supposed to be finding a job. So, how was I supposed to find a job in a pandemic? Um, but I also wanted an opportunity where I can sort of bridge both parts of my world. And that would be, the spiritual side of me that's deeply invested in racial justice and healing, right? Deeply invested in healing community with community and social transformation. But also, there's that part of me that's deeply invested in education because I've seen it. I've seen the benefits that education has had on the communities, on my peers, right? The ways that my family fought for it. And I wanted to really continue that work. And so, finding the Institute with a good friend of mine who also was a teacher who said it's time now, let's just do what we've been wanting to do for years, supporting schools, supporting teachers, supporting students, supporting my neighborhood. Let's do it in this way. And so then the Institute is birthed. Some of the work that we do, we are really working to help schools become the catalyst for social transformation. And so we are providing the services and the support and the resources and frameworks that help schools do just that. Schools don't operate in silos, they are in community. Right. And we know that the best way to support students is to provide those wraparound services for students so that the heavy burden is not just put on the schools, it's not just put on the communities, it's about the partnerships. So, what partnerships are essential to ensuring that schools become that site of transformation that we need to see? And so we've supported schools through workshops, of course, and PDs and those things. We've put out some lesson plans to help support in that way. We've provided free resources and panels. We've done all these different things in ways that we help schools to do just that. But currently, we are working on developing a new learning model that we are putting out to schools that would include curriculum and interdisciplinary curriculum that is created, which also includes art, right? We talk about art as being super important. And so we are currently in the development stage of that learning model. So if folks are interested in learning more about what that looks like and what it requires, feel free to reach out to us. But this learning model not only focuses on curriculum and instruction, right? All areas of student learning and experiences are considered at the heart of this learning model. And so definitely reach out if you have any questions about that. But I'm a community person, so I like to give back to the community. And so we also just wrapped up our third annual Create Freedom Artivist Fellowship, which is a 6-week virtual fellowship where we help students of different communities be able to share and tell their stories about what they're passionate about, their commitment to social justice and transformation through art. And so we give them some training on what is all these things. So what is abolition? What is grassroots organizing, right? And then also they work with teaching artists on particular art mediums like creative writing, visual storytelling, and they present what they've created at the end and showcase it to everyone. And we've had some really wonderful fellows to come through that program. And so we're hoping to see that grow next year. I'm really excited about what that will be. And then some other things that are in the works. Our very first in-person event. We've never had an in-person event. We've been a virtual org. I know. People are like, you've never had, we have never had an in-person event. Everything has been virtually because that's how we started. And so it's easier to do virtual. We reach everyone, right? Our audience is across the US and even in some international sites. So for us, because of that, we've just sort of kept to the virtual, but it's been really important for me to sort of be in my community now. And I think we're at a place where we can support programming right here in my neighborhood. So we are hosting our very first panel in person. So look out for that. More details to come. We'll see y'all in February for Black History Month. We usually do our Creating Loving Schools for Black Students panel. It'll be the first one that we host in person. So we're looking forward to that. Y'all will be on the lookout for that. But those are some of the things that are in the works for us right now. So yeah, and we're going to do more on social media. I've been a little shy about the social media thing. I think we've done pretty well on social media, but me personally being on there is not something I've liked to do. It's something I've done. I'm not a fan of it, but we are coming back to being on social media more. So look forward to seeing us out there too.
And I think first off, it's always lovely to see you on social media. I hope you continue to go that path. And I feel you about social media because it is work. Like people don't realize when you're putting together a 60 to 90-minute reel, people
I'm
don't
telling you.
see the 50 million takes that you have to go through to get to that final result. People don't see you adding things from InShot, all
Mm-hmm.
the captions and all the extra pictures and things like that. That is a process that can be very exhausting. And if you're someone that isn't into putting in that kind of time, you'll get tired about it real quick. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel you on the social media piece, but it's a necessary tool now, given the era that we're in technology, that we use that tool
Mm-hmm.
to activate people and get them mobilized. But I want to talk to you about what you do in the church, right? So you are a youth pastor,
Mm.
and I'm thinking about your role as a pastor, as someone that's in the faith-based institution. And I'm thinking about what's happening throughout our country with all of the anti-trans laws, the anti-LGBTQ plus legislation that's being pushed through so many state legislatures. And I know people are quick to say, oh, just on the red states, but nah, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Red, blue, wherever you are on the political spectrum, it's happening. So I'm curious because we know that when we think about the default body, as you mentioned in the beginning, we talk about cis heteronormativity being part of that criteria, right? And we know that in the Christian faith, that's something that's also perpetuated as well, like this idea. So I'm wondering, in your work as a scholar, in your work as an anti-bias, anti-racist activist,
Mm-hmm.
how are you able to have those conversations with folks in a Christian community? Maybe they're within your church family, maybe they're not, to get them to understand that we need to rewrite some of these traditional narratives that we've been conditioned to believe just through Bible study, through how we read the Bible and everything.
That is such a layered question.
I
There are
know. I
so
know.
many
I
things.
hit you
I'm
with
like,
that.
ooh, there are so many directions I
There's a
could go.
lot.
There are so many directions I could go in, okay? Because then we can talk about whose Christianity we talking about. We can
Hmm.
talk about interpretation. Whose interpretation have we been rocking with? Whose study of the Bible have we been talking about? Whose theology? Like you just opened up a whole can of worms. But I'm putting it like this: at the bare, basic, simple foundation of it all,
There you go.
if we believe that the Christian faith is about this radical form of love that we talk about, that Jesus has for us, that God has, and all these things that we're talking about at the foundation of what love is supposed to be. Bell Hooks even says this. So I'm bringing a little bit of
Mhm.
everybody. Bell's like, if violence is present, I don't know that love could be there either, right? So, if your theology is violent and it is stripping people of their humanity because you believe that you are right about this, that God actually says this, when that's not what God is saying at all, that's not how I'm interpreting the text, that's not what the Bible is even meant to do. At the end of the day, if the foundation of it all is that we are supposed to love God's people and love them fiercely, that tells me that any harm that they experience out in the world, I'm supposed to show up and love those people fiercely. And so at the end of the day, if these are all God's children, and we all are God's children, then if that's your faith, right? And that's your faith position, that's where you come from, I have to be on the side of the Jesus I was reading about, right? The Jesus who was
Mhm.
always on the side of those who were oppressed, the Jesus who experienced oppression, right? Living under Roman Empire, the Jesus who experienced living in impoverished areas, experienced poverty. That kind of Jesus who was always on the periphery, who was always with the people that others folks put on the outside, He would not rock with anything that we are saying and doing with these anti-trans laws. I also
Mhm.
am someone who rides for social justice. So I also have to say we cannot ingest white supremacy into our Black theology and think that that's
Right.
going to be okay. Anytime our religion and our faith is about control, that's not something I want for me. And so when I talk to people at the end of the day, it's hard to put it all in just a couple of minutes, right? Because then there are some conversations I have to have about whose interpretation are we talking about, and what in the text are we actually referring to, right?
Right.
Because I'm also someone who sees scripture differently than other people. I've been trained differently. I've been trained to ask the hard questions of the Bible and sometimes be left without those answers. But too often, not many people are trying to do that. But the only answer, that really I get from the text in general is that radical love ought to be a part of our theology regardless.
Mhm.
And when I see anti-trans laws, when I see people attacking my queer siblings and things like that, I am disheartened by it. I am angry by it because I understand that we are all God's children
That's right.
and we all deserve to live in a world that cares for us. The problem is we've been taught to hate ourselves.
Mm.
How many times have we been told that as a people, we are not I'm not deserving of God's love, but I'm so glad he gives it to me anyway. Why are you not deserving of God's love? Who says that at birth you are not deserving of that kind of love? I'm really trying to understand that. And so because we automatically start, for some of us, I can't put everybody in there, but for some of us, we've been trained that we are not worthy, that we are not good enough for God's
Sure.
love, and yet God loves us anyway. But what if we started from the position of God says that you are good from the start? How then does that change the ways that we love ourselves?
Mm. Wow.
How does
Wow.
that change? So I love myself so deeply. I have no room to be out here trying to control how someone else loves themselves. Because we deserve to live out in our authentic truths. We deserve to live out in the world exactly who we are, because that's who God created us to be.
Wow. You just spit like bars upon bars upon bars. And as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about the number of friends I have who have grown up with this conditioning of not being good enough,
Mhm.
whether it's for Jesus, for God, because of who they are, right? And I'm just thinking to myself, imagine if they started from the standpoint that you mentioned. All
Mhm.
those years of trauma they would be able to get rid of from the
Mhm.
jump, and they could just live freely. So yeah, that's powerful that you even
Yeah.
mentioned that. Whew.
Because I've been learning more and more about this love thing. I've been reading books on it. What is love? I've been trying to think through it, right? That's why I'm reading The Power of Radical Self-Love. That's why I'm reading all about love. That's why I'm reading from different folks who talk about ways that we show up
Mm.
as humans. That's why I'm reading folks like Candace Marie Bimbo, who writes about red lip theology, because in the world where everybody is teaching us to hate ourselves, who is loving us?
Mm.
And
Wow.
even as I think about scholarship, because I was writing I was writing a paper, right, about the work of publicly engaged scholarship, right? And the publicly engaged scholar has to have, in my opinion, a framing of radical care. It's an ontological question of how do we understand what it means to be human first?
Mm.
And then how do we understand what it means to radically care for the human being? Then maybe we'll see social services differently. Maybe it won't be that we have to work extra hard to get free housing, to get
Wow.
free education, free healthcare. Maybe if we understood that at the starting point, the human being that is born to the earth deserves to be radically cared for. That
Mm,
means you should have food on your table. That means
mm.
you should have something over your head. That
Come
means you
on.
should be clothed. That means you should have education. That means you should not die on the operating table because your doctor is racist. That means that the world is deserving of caring for you. But we have been so disconnected from understanding how to actually care for the human because the system teaches us that that's not how you make it. It's about the individual. It's about how you pull yourself up. But that ain't how we were actually supposed to be on this planet.
Not at all. Not
It's
at
supposed
all.
to be intergenerational care. It's supposed to be all of these different things that says you as a human being deserve to be cared for. You don't have to work for it. You didn't ask to be born. But why we got to work extra hard just to get a meal on the table? We are killing ourselves and not experiencing the world as we ought to in that abundant living because the world is trying to strip us of the very thing that makes us human, and that is love.
Oof. Okay. You
See,
giving us that Sunday sermon three
listen, don't
days early, and
don't
I'm
push
loving
me.
every piece of it. Listen.
I'm
But
sorry, y'all. I just went on a
no, this is
whole rant.
good. No, you being you. That's what I'm talking about. That's why you're here. This is identity talk right here. It's all about authenticity, and I love it. I love it. Listen, Ashley, we got two more questions to close this dope conversation out. I really wish we had more time, but this has
All
just been
good.
awesome. My first question to close us out is, how do you stay true to the teacher in you?
That teacher is always learning. And I think about when I started teaching many years ago. I was teaching the way that I saw others do it. But the teacher in me has always been one to learn.
Mm,
Learn from the books, learn from the people around me, learn from my students. Remember that no? I always talking about that no is only one thing. If I learn how to do it better, I know I'll get a yes.
that's right.
I think that learning for me is about how do I connect better and what do people need, right? Talking about that radical care. And so I'm always about learning. And so for me to stay true to the teacher in me, it's not necessarily about me having to tell the world about these things and being on all these platforms and everybody reading my books that I'm speaking into, okay, in the future,
Come on.
or everybody reading my books and all these things. No, it's really just about what am I learning from other people? What am I learning about being in community with people? And how do I communicate that when I'm in community? How do I talk about it amongst each other? And I mean that every day. If you have my kitchen table with my nana for Sunday dinner, you better know I'm learning from you because these are lessons that I need, but also we're gonna share. It's a relationship. So we're gonna share some learnings that I've also picked up along the way. And so I think at the heart of it, it is learning and it's also relationship.
Mm,
Maintaining
yeah.
community is about honoring and being in right relationship with the folks around me, with the planet, with, for me, because I'm Christian, with my Lord, right? So it's about being in right relationship with all those things around us. So, yeah.
And then the last question, when your work is done, not that this work is ever done. When we talk about anti-racist work, social justice work, anti-bias work is never done. But when the professional part of that work is done and you hang it up,
Hmm.
how do you want people to remember you?
Mm. I hope they remember how I love them.
Mm,
That's it. That, you know, we talk about the journey. I've been to wonderful places, I've met wonderful people, but I hope at every point, not that you have to like me, it's not that I have to be liked by everybody, I don't think that's it, but I do hope that at the end of the day they would have known that I love them and that meant something. And so yeah, when I'm done professionally and all those things, I hope that people see my love and that's what they talk about.
awesome. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on to
Thank
the
you.
podcast. This has
Thank
been
you.
amazing. And then, of course, we can't let you go without giving you a chance to just share with viewers and listeners how to connect with you on social media, how they can get connected to the Institute for Anti-Racist Education, all of the great work y'all doing. So let the people know how they
Yes,
can.
you can follow us. Thank you so much for having me. You can follow us on Instagram at Anti-Racist ED Institute, so Anti-Racist Ed Institute. You can also, we're on LinkedIn, so you can find us on LinkedIn and Facebook, but we really just be using Instagram, okay? You can also sign up for our free newsletter at antiracist.ed.org. You can sign up for our newsletter for free to see what we have going on and to support our work. You can also follow me personally. I ain't got much going on my personal page, but if you would like to see my little shenanigans, because I will shenanigan on my personal page, you can follow me at Ashley_Yolanda. Check out our blog. I write there pretty often. So yeah, that's where we are.
Y'all hear it.
Mhm.
Make sure y'all link up with the Institute. They're doing phenomenal things. And Ashley, again, thank you.
Thank you.
And hope you have a wonderful day.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Right, y'all. Another phenomenal episode of Identity Talk for Educators Live is in the books. Man, season 3 has gone off to a phenomenal start. I can't wait for y'all to meet more of these phenomenal guests. But as always, until next time, people, wish you all good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. We're going to do this again another time. Peace out, people.